Well, there's some, of course, you guys know about weak spots in the ground, battering of weather conditions and movements is naturally is going to start to wear and tear on the infrastructure, and which causes a weakness. For many years now, the Army Corps of Engineers has been fortifying quite a bit, quite a few things, working with civil engineers to get most of our infrastructure fortified, and other places as well. They've been dispatched all over the place. Unfortunately, the Earth is not predictive, and things weaken over time. And when they do, well, things like not only that, not only Georgia's dam, but there are some other infrastructure weak points that are of grave concern, and they are working on it. Everything is not shared because everything, it's a high probability that they can dispatch enough resources to take care of certain things, and in those situations, they do not announce them to the public because it would just cause unnecessary headache. Okay, and that's really important for you guys to understand that, not to announce everything. But I was shocked over the last couple of days what they did announce, and I don't. It's like a zero reaction, except for the individuals who received the message. Listen to me carefully. I shared something a long time with you guys, and I give you a scenario, right? If there were special organizations in the world, right, and they had operatives out in the world, and for the sake of security, the organization keeping it under wraps because they have very, very special missions. Nobody can know that these organizations exist, nor can they ever see any of the people together talking or anything like that, though they would work all the time and receive intelligence. But the question is, how would they receive intelligence? Well, it couldn't go through the mail system. It could not go through any defense system, right? Couldn't do that. You can go through regular chains of communication. It would have to be something that is out in the open, yet hidden at the same time. So how would you do that? How would you give somebody a message that is an operative working on a specific task, but nobody could know, but you would do so in the open so that the recipients and the recipients only would receive the message and understand? For example, suppose you had a group of very privileged individuals, and they were alerted of certain tactics, message sequences that would take place over the media, over television, movies, so on and so forth. How would they receive something without ever calling the person, without sending them a piece of mail? How would you inform them and keep them up to date as far as what happens? How would you do that? You do it through the open, correct? I, for one, right, I wouldn't write anything down. I wouldn't directly contact anybody because that's too risky. What I would use is what's already there. I would use marketing. I would use television, right? I would use movies. I would not use any other avenue. I would have to use those things that are accessible all over the world. And frankly, I would have to use those venues that are popular. Listen close. You guys know it's no secret now about this UFO topic. It keeps coming up. Have you noticed? Verification from the Pentagon. They just released that publicly, right? Actually, it's a pilot that says, yes, we engaged it, and yes, it was a unidentified aerial vehicle or phenomena. Yes, it was, wasn't anything I was familiar with. So he somewhat conceded that it was something that blew his mind, right? But you keep hearing this story pop up, but are you doing any follow-ups to see if it's real or not? I uttered something a long time ago, something that was established back in the 60s and 70s, as part of, it was open then, but it's kind of shut down now. Do you guys remember when I said that they put truth, a lot of truth? They mix it with comedy. You guys remember that? They will purposely mix it with comedy. Number one, because of the psychological impact. Number two, because if anybody utters in seriousness a subject that's been spoken by public comedians, nobody's going to listen to them. They would be instantly discredited, laughed out the building, so on and so forth. But they use that, right? If I had people out there, I would use comedy all the time to confirm times and dates. I would do it all the time. Well, if you guys remember me saying that, hopefully you do. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you understand something. I tell you, it was done. Not only was it done, but there are certain terms that are being brought to bear that you should remember that they're now utilizing. And why are they doing this? Because of the time element that's left. There's only a little bit of time left before specific things they know very well about. They've already announced the time a couple of times in a couple of places. They announced the exact same timing element a few times. The message has gone out, the warning has gone out, which is why certain terms are being used. Comedians have come out to verify it out of the blue. And I'm wondering, did anybody catch it? Now, we're not past the 48-hour mark. So chances are you can go back to yesterday. Start looking at any popular comedians that could speak to anybody in the USA without any special equipment, and you'll hear it. You'll hear it likely in a joke or something like that. In fact, you'll hear it just the way we discussed it a long time ago. If you're paying attention. Now, when you do hear it, they're not lying about the timing because you're going to hear it again. You'll hear that 10 more times. The exact same verification will be given 10 more times, and then it won't be spoken of anymore. Somebody says Bible time. No, mankind does not know Bible time references. They don't know anything about God's timing. They only know about those things they're in contact with. And those things will most certainly do exactly what they said they would do. Because they've been held back a long time. They've been promised something. And people are at a point of consumption. So people are ripe, so to speak, for the picking. And that time will come. If you have not taken notice, all the old things are falling apart right before your eyes. I often talked of one kingdom that already fell, and it was only alive by ideology. It was not alive by any other means, because people believed that system still existed. They spoke of that system, not knowing that they were living in another kingdom. Well, that kingdom is going to be made very evident in a very short time frame. And people will find themselves a brand new kingdom. Things are changing fast, and they're changing in accordance to topics that were spoken. So you don't have to comb through it. That same message has been given to everybody all over the world. It's just that people are not taking their time to decipher the message. In fact, they don't have to do much to decipher that message, but I'm telling you, it went out. And the timing they're given is the exact timing. And now that happens to coincide with a phenomenon, an unbelievable event, an event of harm, you could say. And it just so happens that the message has been given in a time that in one of the first broadcasts we spoke about. The conditions surrounding the message. They are surrounding the message. So here's what you do. You guys know about this UFO topic. You know about that. It's been put all over the place. In fact, you can't get away from it, right? The next thing you need to do is find verification by way of comedians. I know it sounds strange, but that's what you're doing. You have the 48-hour mark. It's not here yet, so you have 24 hours to find some popular comedian that any and everybody could listen to. And just take a note of what I said. Now, don't repeat it yourselves. because you'll have no footing for it. I'm just giving you a hint of what you're going to hear about 10 more times. Verification of that exact same thing. It's almost just like that term full stop. All of them go together and they mean something big, life-changing for everybody. Nothing goes back to normal from that point. Now, as Christians, we should be ready for that. And that demands clarity as far as what it looks like. Somebody says, is coming maybe perhaps the data added up? No, it has nothing to do with the Bible. Nothing to do with anything in the Bible. This is man and what man has kept hidden for a long time. This is all man. Man does not have plans for anything that would override nor interfere with our Father's decrees. They have no ability to do that. They've been told that. They have no ability to do that. Even they work on a voluntary basis. They do so in a beguiling way, but they don't really force people to do anything. They cause people to give themselves over to different systems. They have you that way by way of your loyalty. Satan is not going to force anybody to serve him. Satan will manipulate people, and then in turn he will get them to give their loyalty to his work. And if you worship the work of a person, you worship the person, which is why in Revelation it states that the world worshipped the dragon and they worshipped the beast. Now, folks, unfortunately, you guys just listen verbatim, take what I said and go do it. It is quite clear. It must meet all the criteria I just spoke about and go do it. So find it. Find it for yourselves and you'll know. You'll know. And if I were you, once you do find out, which you will, listen for the 10 confirmations because it will come over and over again. And then you will not hear it again. The next thing that will happen will be the event. That's what will happen. But you guys are supposed to be in the know, correct? You may ask yourself, well, why not just come out and say it? Because you'd never get it out. Anybody know what it's like? I knew a person one time, there's a story told to me. Well, I heard it. And it was a message to a lot of us young, new people, right? And it was about dying needlessly. The message was this. Suppose you had something life-altering to tell the world. And it was one of those subjects that the world will not believe. If you go out there and you don't do it in the proper way, you could tell everybody about it. You could be laughed out of existence. Your life would be troubled. And no one would be the wiser about what would come. And then when the time came, everybody would be caught off guard and blame you because you didn't come forward with great sincerity. In other words, you would suffer needlessly. Why? Because you told something prematurely and you did not have anything in place to validate your story as you told it. Because people require validation when they cannot see something. And if you tell it without validation, they can't take certain subjects on good faith. They won't act on it. They won't do anything with it. In fact, and when the time comes, they will think of you. They will seek to kill you because it was so serious, and they will blame you for not being serious about telling it. So if anybody goes out there with a subject that is quite serious and they try and attempt to tell the world, they can be taken out. No one's going to be any the wiser, but they just remove themselves off the entire game board. They can't help a soul now. See how that works? It'd be like one of you guys, if you knew something that would happen to mankind, and you went out and told everybody before you ever got started, you could be removed from the board because somebody would hear you prematurely before you could tell the world. And for something that had no bearing on the next 5 years, you could be locked up for 5 years, no contact with anybody, for a message you never got out. And then when the time came, Well, it would happen anyway, and you would have to watch. It'd be horrible. So you had to be as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. If you had the exact same information that some organization did, right? They weren't telling everybody. You couldn't either. You would have to be wise in how you stated things. So instead of telling everybody that a specific event would happen, wouldn't you rather, because you're a Christian, tell people to strengthen your faith in your Lord and Savior? Open your ears to hear his word. Make sure that you can respond to the call of the Holy Spirit. Never get caught up in your own life so much you can no longer see the outside world. Keep your life in balance. Don't walk around with a heavy conscience because you didn't forgive everybody all around you. Clean out your rooms in these hidden places in our lives, right? So you can be free. So your conscience is clear, so you can hear the Lord, so you will not be burdened with all these ideas and hatred and violence. Stay free of it, so your eyes will remain open. Wouldn't you encourage a person to do that? If it were a serious matter, I tell you this, if it were life or death, that's precisely what I will tell people. I will not tell them the event. That would do no good. Haven't you seen what happens when people tell a truth? I've heard truth spoken. I've seen that demonstrated. I've seen an official state a truth and no one listened. Not one soul listened. And the person turns around to everybody and says, see? A month later, nothing. Years later, nothing. So I know what happens. It's almost like there's a mechanism within our minds that will not hear the truth. It just won't do it sometimes for certain subjects. But I can tell you this, they're passing messages to people who matter. And because you're able to see it, right? You must be as wise as serpents. Always know your environment. Always. Be a responsible person. Assume responsibility over things in your life. Never look to blame anybody. And be wise. If you're going to be as wise as a serpent, you have to stop running. You can't run away. You can't point a finger or take a side on every subject that is presented. By the way, who told anybody they had to play the game? No one did. No one. You don't have to play the game. That's not what you're here for. But you're here to help those who are trapped in the game. They believe it. Hook, line, and sinker. Aren't they the purpose, the point of us being here in the first place? But you have to be absolutely free before you do it. That means you can't have an infestation of spirits in your life and seek to have somebody else free because something is with you already. You have to reach a point where you don't agree with evil at all. Most people do agree with evil. They just don't know it. Why? Because of pride. See, sometimes we agree with an evil way, but because of pride, we refuse to accept it, so we won't change. You get rid of pride, you'll be able to see it. You'll become humble again, and you will not hide. You won't hide because you're no longer seeking to save your own skin, but you're ready to lay everything down for a good cause. See, when a cause is good enough, you'll give up everything to achieve it. If it's good enough, what greater cause is that of the gospel? There is none, is there? No one is here to hide. But the Lord often said that his children, they go the opposite direction a lot. Why? Because they keep believing flesh. They won't believe him, but they'll believe flesh. So much so, they'll change the word so they can make themselves feel comfortable. Right? Has anybody ever felt comfortable in your surroundings, but you were ate up inside? You were not peaceful. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You felt comfortable, but you were not peaceful. Your mind not at rest. Your soul certainly not at rest. You're ate up with questions, with all sorts of things. You can find no peace. That's like bipolarism. A lot of people believe that they're bipolar. Right? Now, medicine helps folks who are bipolar because it tranquilizes them. It's what it does. You'd be shocked to know the root cause of it. It's so funny that people who are bipolar, they also have a big problem. You know what it is? They refuse to accept responsibility of things in their life. They always have someone to blame. Why is that a common factor with those who are bipolar? And all they have to do is never blame a person again. Just tell themselves, look in the mirror and say, I will never blame another soul again. I'll never blame anybody. But it's funny how that just about in every single case, person who is bipolar, they have someone to blame. You take away that blame, their target is gone. There is no reason for that influence to rise again in them that is ready to accuse. By the way, that's where accusation leads to. When you have someone to accuse, it'll rise in you also. It's a type of anger, bitterness. It's a very strong anger because it's more like an entity. I don't subscribe to these, all things of the world. Medicine is okay because it can calm your body down enough where you can think straight. But all it does is suppress the inevitable. That's why people have to stay on medication. One day they're not going to have that medication, then what? Then whatever's within them, right, is going to activate their flesh in certain ways and they won't be able to calm it down. Would it be good to know if they could start that process with themselves now? But see, the Lord can heal you right now, but he's not going to control you. Have you noticed that? And when you blame somebody, this is your intent going out. If you notice, God does not change the intent of us. If he could, all of us would be healed. If your intent is corrupted, your body's going to remain broken. Things will remain broken. Stagnant things will stay with you. If you begin to correct it by the word of the Lord, which means never blame a person for anything ever again, that changes your life. The Lord heals from the inside out, which is why when he healed somebody, he said, go and sin no more. So what was he doing? Did he heal the outside or did he just heal the inside? You know what I believe? I believe one thing, and I won't turn away from it. I do not believe that God healed the outside. Here's what I believe. I believe that when decay, darkness, and death, and evil, and all those things are taken from the inside, and a person is made whole on the inside, the body must always complement the one that's driving it. That's what I believe. In other words, your body follows your state of being. That's why the word says, I would that you prosper as your soul prosper. If your soul has nicks and gouges and bruises in it, it's not because somebody else did it. It's because we agree with something that's called death or decay, right? And once we no longer agree with it, the soul is free. The Lord already said, I would that you prosper as your soul prosper. You know what that is? That's a conditional blessing. That means as your soul prospers, so will you be whole. Listen at the mandate. When Jesus healed people, he said, go and sin no more lest a worse thing come upon you. That's pretty heavy. That's really heavy. Can you imagine if you asked the Lord for healing right now and he said, I'm going to heal you. And he did so. But he said, okay, you have no sin. You have no uncleanness. Don't sin again or your condition will be worse than what it was. How many can really handle that? How many ever listen to that statement that way? Can you imagine that? Any one of you, can you imagine that? Being healed totally. But then the Lord tells you, if you go sin again, you're going to be in 20 times more pain and sorrow than you were in. How many can handle that? I can almost guarantee that people who really believe, they would say, no, thank you. I don't want to be healed right now. I want to be taught the ways of righteousness. The healing will come as I begin to walk behind you. Listen, I'm telling you this now because that's precisely what I did. That's what I'm doing. Because I believe in the word. I know that if the Lord made me 100% complete right now, the question is not, could I go on not sinning? That's not the question. The question is, do I have a righteous intent to walk that line, never to be bothered with sin again? Because I know the world is sneaky. Satan traps people all the time. Do you know how many things I would have to walk away from not to sin? And then would that be sinning within itself? Because I couldn't totally isolate myself. No, what I must learn to do is overcome everything that causes me to sin. How about that one? We're not here to run away. We're here to overcome through Christ. So what has the Lord been doing? He already knows you need to be healed. And guess what he's doing? Guess what he's been doing this entire time? He's been making you whole. This is active and ongoing. Every day of your life, he's been making you whole. You already asked for the healing, not by way of your mouth, but you cried for it in this broken flesh. And he's been making you whole this entire time. How does he do that? By causing you to see what you have been choosing, what you have been agreeing with. For the stubborn ones, I tell you, they'll be given over to their own iniquity very shortly. But to the ones who press for the mark of the high calling, the Lord will be their strength to break everything. Everything will be broken. But your intent must be with the Lord. You must have no one to blame for anything in your life another day. That intent portion is yours. That's you. What you want is what you're going after, is what you ultimately have in your life. If you want someone guilty, you're going to be the vessel to blame that person and to frame that person as a guilty person. But if you want a guilty innocent, you're going to be used as a vessel of healing yourselves. So many people want folks to pay for what they have done. They don't say, I want the person to pay for it. You know what they say? They say, I want that person to know what they did to me. Here's a better question. How many of us would like to know what it felt like to be Christ? How many of us would like to know what it's like to die for someone who will continue to turn their back on you? That person that you blame for things in your life, could you die for that person instead of blaming that person? Because that's precisely what the Savior did for us. We want justice so much, and yet we're not willing to justify another's life in Christ because of their offenses against us. And these ways ought not be. But because they are, there are two camps clearly forming in the world. And now I have a message for you guys tonight. Something I want to share with you that somebody said just this morning. It actually in the last, I see about last year, it's really been said quite a few times. First, in the old noggin, right? But then others are starting to say the same thing. So we better prepare.